Welcome to the show. In this one, I have a conversation with Alaskan artist Duke Russell. Growing up in Anchorage in the 1970s, Duke would draw everything he could in downtown Anchorage. At that time, he and his dad were living in an apartment above a bar called Ruthie's 49er, which would later become Darwin's Theory. Duke would sell his paintings in downtown Anchorage for $1, in addition to working and going to school. A lot of his youth was also spent taking care of his alcoholic father. It was this upbringing, in a past version of Anchorage, that continues to influence his art. Today, Duke's art can be seen all over the city of Anchorage, from restaurants to banks to local theaters and the Anchorage Museum. This podcast is made possible through the generous support of the Crude Magazine Patreon subscribers. If you already subscribe to the Crude Magazine Patreon, thank you. For those listeners who aren't, please consider subscribing at www.patreon.com/crudemagazine. That's patreon.com/crudemagazine. And pick the subscription tier that works for you. I want to thank everyone subscribed at the Company Man tier. These are the people who have subscribed to the Crude Patreon for $50 or more. Trina Duber, Seward Brewing Company, The Grind Coffee Shop in Juneau, Derek Adolph, Blue and Gold Board Shop, Sharon Liska, Alaska Surf Adventure, and Aquila Space. Thank you to all the Patreon subscribers. Your money and your support make these conversations possible. Okay, back to Duke Russell. Duke has been in the Alaska art scene for over 50 years now. In that time, he's experienced a lot of failures, growth, and success. He's not afraid to voice his frustrations, and he's not afraid to talk about the lessons he's learned. In fact, he's able to find humor in most things. In this conversation, we get a glimpse of how Duke's mind works. It considers everything, the importance of telling the truth and the transient nature of life, how life is constantly in flux, and the more we accept that, the more we're in rhythm with it. So here he is, Duke Russell. This red light right here, it means we're recording.
Okay, fire it up.
Crude conversations. Listen more, then you talk.
Go to work!
So the other day when we were on the phone setting this conversation up, you said that you have a scooter that you ride around town and that everyone is always trying to race you.
Yeah, and I look pretty threatening, with my artistic profile and everything. No, I don't know what it is. I think that when they see me tucked behind the small windshield and I look like fucking Pee Wee Herman going down the street, they're just like, I got to take this fool on, And I just, I cruise around in my car sometimes, just to the grocery store, and I don't have to commute or anything. So I'm not in it like everybody else. So what I've noticed after kind of a large hiatus of kind of being super, isolated before this ever happened, but, is like things change without me getting the memo. And so people have gone just like a little more crazy without me getting the memo on that. And so I'm reminded when I'm out on the streets, and especially now that I'm really kind of deliberately going everywhere, it's a whole different experience. Everybody's very courteous, and it's like I'm riding a fucking unicorn down the street. They're waving and they're like, oh my God, and all these like cute, it's like little kids, want to jump on my scooter, and ride with me off to the sunset. So it's the new van, right? Who needs a panel van now? With free candy, written on the outside of it and stuff. But no, seriously, the scooter has been a real informative tool for me. And it started out as like, well, what am I doing? I can't just ride around Lake Spenard my entire life. I have to, branch out, because I just love that ride around Lake Hood. And it's so just feels like someplace else, And it's not like, I just like to take these little small mental vacations, and just kind of pretend that I'm in a new town or something, and try to look at it with those eyes of like, what if I was traveling right now and I was trying to navigate to whatever,
Hmm.
just try to remove yourself from, this is the town I've lived in for 50 years. So new eyes, new perspectives, and I've gone through an evolution of attitude as well. I started out kind of judgy, and I would look at these scrappy places and go, oh my God, I wouldn't ever want to live here or whatever. But going back a few times and realizing that it's just a style choice. You got your roundup lawns with the American flag out front. Absolutely not one single dandelion. Everything's all cropped and trimmed, and the house is painted gray or red, white, and blue, and their cars are white and spotless, and that's their trip. That's what they're doing. And on the other side of that coin, you got the kind of more scrappier Alaskan homesteady types who've got the four-wheelers and the this and the that, and they're botrytis outside their house, and they don't give a fuck about it. So I say let them be who they are. Everybody's on the journey, and I try to see beauty in it. I do get scared when I see a house like all alone and the grass is all grown up, and or like a burned up trailer,
Hmm.
in a trailer park, and it's just sitting there, and people driving by it every day on their way onto their trailer. It's kind of like, why doesn't somebody get rid of that thing? I mean, that I'm sure it was a tragic night.
Like it happened in one night.
Well, like what, it maybe it happened 6 months ago, but the thing's still there, and I'm just kind of like being empathetic to the people that maybe were, experienced the loss. Maybe there was tragedy, somebody lost their life. You don't know, but the idea
Okay.
is to process this and like almost like a psychotherapy kind of thing, like really internalize the reality of what is going on. So if you drove down every street in Anchorage, you're going to slowly start making little check marks, and you may not know what kind of category to put it in, but you saw that before somewhere else. You saw that before somewhere else. Or you didn't. It's an anomaly, and it's like these really unique roof lines over in Boniface. It was kind of, it seemed like the trend in the 70s, but it's a time marker, and these things are, to me, interesting in the construct of the growth of our town. How did it grow? For a long time, the end of Northern Lights was at Boniface, and it turned into Campbell Airstrip Road that went up to Stuckagen Heights and the Botanical Gardens and what we know as Baxter Road today. But, there are maps at the museum that have like a 1950 road map of Anchorage. It is a very informative map because of what it doesn't show. And I carry that across when I talk to people. I don't always listen to what they're saying, but I'm more interested in what they're not saying, and I'm looking at the negative spaces in their conversation.
What kinds of things do people not say?
Oh, the stuff I want to hear, the embarrassing parts.
And you're okay talking about that stuff?
It depends. No, I don't like people dumping personal stuff on me, because that's personal, you know.
Yeah.
But like an Instagram profile, look at us camping, look at us getting along in the van that we live in, look at us, aren't you jealous of this thing? And then they just leaving out all the shitty bits.
Hmm. It's just the highlight reel.
Right, right. And I think people are trained for that. And I'm saying this now from my own analysis of myself, of like how in my early 20s and 30s, I wanted to be this big artist. I wanted to make a name for myself. And I was really doing everything, like just dancing for my dinner, just everything I could think of to do, and the work to be noticed. But what I wasn't really facing off with, is some of the things where you realize you're just trying to get back to normal, and you're wasting a lot of time sort of trying to compensate for glaringly obvious things that sort of moments in your life that kind of took you from the mainstream into a more unique experience. And so that could be, tragic. In my case, it was just kind of, real, food insecure and just moving around, and good God knows what's going to happen next or whatever. But it did inform me to survive and to be quick on my feet. But now I'm really just focusing on the work, and I don't really attend to what people think as much. I don't ever want to insult anyone. I just, they're going to do their trip, and they're going to say things, positive, negative about, what I do. I'm just more focused into the work, and being that that's all I do more or less. I'm not on the cross and he's saying that, but being that I do spend a lot of time painting and working and on these things, there's not a lot of other things I'd rather be doing. So, when I see people out in the world, I'm at odds most of the time, because, I have some tenets of people are afraid of automation and all this. There's so much work to be done. There's so much competency to obtain, just that, doing what you say you're going to do, have the competency to do it, have the capacity to bring something to the table, be a giver, not a taker. These are, food, shelter, and clothing. And then we can dick around, do some of this other stuff. But, we really need to get back to almost like this sort of tribalness of sorts of watching out for each other, helping, with the food and just, having a listening ear and all that. I think now more than ever, we're going to rely on these very humanistic things to fill the void, because I think we were chasing all the money down the street to buy this and buy that, the Katie Spade purses, and I can't relate to a lot of it, even, as a parent, when I see a parent with a lot of ink on their body, I wonder,
You mean tattoos?
yeah, are they getting enough food for the children, and are the parents being children themselves, and not raising their children and not having a mature mind, and I think this is something that's really important because we focus on age when we should focus on maturity, when we can have delayed gratification, etc.
Do you think that you have that mindset because throughout your life as an artist, you've recognized the phoniness in people?
Well, I think as you get older, when you get bamboozled like X amount of times, you really start, paying attention. And I tell you what, I hate getting sideswiped. And so sideswiped is something that a good friend can do to you. It can be a flake out on an agreement, or something like that, or like get attacked, or not attacked, but called out for something that seems unjustified.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of stuff. So as you get older, you kind of feel like you've seen this show before, and it really is. I mean, there's only so, like when you're talking about foreign language, or communication, they're really fundamentals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where to eat, where to shit, where to sleep, I mean, it's all real basic stuff. And so that being able to, I lost my point now. Shit. There it goes.
That's okay. We were talking about, or I'd mentioned what could be perceived as the phoniness in people, and maybe that's where that mindset came from.
Oh, yeah. Okay, getting back. Thanks. The truth is what I was getting. That was my next thing. The truth is the truth. Now, that doesn't mean like radical honesty to me, because that means like you just have no filter and da da da. You have to have a filter. You have to have kind of a context to say certain things. But the truth, like when you're painting a painting, and if you're delusional, you're going, wow, that looks good. And just like one of those singers on America's Got Talent, you know, it's like somebody should have told them a long time ago they're off pitch and it doesn't sound very good. Somebody's got to tell them,
Yeah.
you know, and nobody told them. But in art, if you know enough and you know that it's wrong in your drawing, you can't go, oh, that looks fine. No, it's like, fuck, what did you just do? That looks like donkey do. You know, fix it. You know, no, those are the voices. You know, those are very stringent voices. Now, I still draw like a child. That's not really what I'm talking about. You know, you can still make something really cool and make it. It could be primitive.
You think you draw like a child?
In a lot in my drawing paintings, yeah, my cartoon paintings.
Okay.
I do a lot of like architectural stuff with hard edges and photographic lens. You know, it's all derived from a photograph, and it's very, very obvious. You know, those paintings are very hard edged, and were my comical paintings, like at the Rustic Goat, there's this scene of 4th Avenue with this kid on the dad's shoulders, and the kid's got his hands covering the dad's eyes, and everything's a little wonky. You know, it's out of perspective a little bit, you know, but I do that sort of intentionally. It's like what an illustrator does.
Okay.
You know?
And I didn't mean to get you off track. You were talking about the importance of the truth. Yeah.
Yeah, the truth. And then so when you apply that to your paintings, you apply that to your world. And then when you know how to bullshit your way around the corner, you know, and then you hear somebody else trying it out on you, you know, it's like, well, number one, that ain't working. And number two, I'm not that stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to say that either. I'm not going to say, well, you think I'm stupid. No, I just like, okay, thank you for showing me to yours. Thank you for showing me who you think I am, or, you know, this is your world perception of me, you know. And, you know, it sounds like I take things personal, which it can happen, you know, if I think the intention is a cutting remark. You know, I'm from that sort of shame ray, you know. Wayne White is a famous artist who did Pee-wee's Playhouse and stuff, and he did this Beauty is Embarrassing. And he has this character called Shame Ray. He's from Tennessee or Kentucky, and I'm from Texas, and it's a similar thing that goes on down there where people shame you for no good reason. Like, you're an artist, you want to be an artist. Well, people will tell you, well, you fucking can't do that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, they think that they're doing you the biggest favor ever. You know, you can't be an artist or whatever. Like, what the fuck do they know? You know, they don't know shit. They're still down in wherever, picking their nose or whatever. And Wayne White is making these amazing 3D letter paintings selling for 20,000-30,000, you know. So who lost that race, you know? He stuck to his guns, and I did too. When I was a child, I was not encouraged. I was not told not to draw, but I was not really encouraged, and I had to scrap my shit together. And that's my extra gear, you know. And I've always, but that stress came at a cost, you know. About 3 or 4 years ago, I just totally, like, when Trump got elected, I just flatlined. I couldn't work. I was, you know, losing my shop. I worked really hard on these projects, which I won't go into now. But so it took me a couple of years. I got my hip done a couple of years ago. I stopped drinking. I lost about 40 pounds. You know, I sleep good at night again. I'm physical. It's amazing. You know, I did a lot of like theater work, stage hand work, and, you know, you're used to having a screw gun in your hand and running up a 6-foot ladder without really even holding on to anything.
Mm-hmm.
You just like scoot up it, scoot down, whatever, hanging off a pipe or whatever, you know. And before my operation, you know, I could barely get up out of the car. You know, it was horrible. And you know, I used to race bicycles 40 years ago. You know, I rode across the country on a tandem, you know, for God's sakes, and to be debilitated like that is very depressing. So
I have a question here that gets to something you just mentioned, and I recently listened to your interview on Alaska Public Media's show State of Art, and in that interview you briefly mentioned your relatively recent sobriety. Is it okay if we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
And this was alcohol, right?
Yeah, I still smoke weed.
Okay. And what was your drink of choice?
Whiskey, beer.
What kind of drinker were you?
For the most part, I keep my shit together, but basically, I would have my my limit would be like 4 shooters and 2 beers, and between the hours of probably 5 and 8, and then I'd go off course if there was an event or something. I'm usually the first to be there and the last to leave,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people can, but that's some years ago, you know. Towards the end, before my operation, it was full on pain, self-medicating, and really feeling sorry for myself,
Mm-hmm.
and depressed, and just not having really any interest, and just not knowing really how it was going to shake out, you know.
So that's why you quit, because of the operation.
That was part of it. You know, I had a first hip operation 3 years before that, and I stopped drinking for a month or so, and I took it pretty seriously. But then I took it pretty casually, starting back in on it, and at first it was, you know, moderate, and then I don't think I was a really super heavy drinker. Would probably drink too much at times, but when I was on my second hip thing, I was on the Oxycontin. That 9 days or whatever I was on, I mean, I recovered like in 6 days. It was amazing. After the first one was 3 weeks or something, but this went really fast. And it was enough of a break to change my habits. And I was really determined this time because I had like this arrhythmic heart and just, you know, just bullshit that was just not me, high blood pressure and stuff. So dropping the weight and not drinking, I just gained my brain back.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I was concerned also for my kids, you know. They're young adults, and I see them partying and following in my footsteps, you know. And so since then, my daughter has stopped drinking, and my son has cut back quite a bit. And so
Was that a conversation that you had with them that made them cut back?
I never have a direct conversation in that respect of like, you should do what I just did.
Mm-hmm.
I would applaud, I would tell them some of the benefits, and they could just see my physical person and be inspired by that. But I would never shame them into their activities just because I've been sober for a couple of years. You know, this is my first time in my adult life. I'm 60 years old. I don't feel 60, but you know, it's like you can't get away with being a dumbass, you know, when you're this old. You know, you owe it to yourself and to the ones that love you to be the best version of yourself,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And it sounds like a sticker or something, but it really is, you know, if you really question what we're doing here, and you really question, like, if there's an afterlife or whatever, you know, to me, don't seek those answers. Those answers are dumb. You know, go forward with the idea it does matter, which it does, right? Because, you know, when things go south, you know, all of this sort of domino effect starts happening. And conversely, when you have a life that is larger than yourself, and you care for other people, and you walk through a store without hiding from someone, you know, I mean, there's certain people that I'd rather not maybe have a conversation with, but I'm not going to totally dodge them.
Yeah.
Know? It is hard to have, you know, 50 years in this town without going, oh, brother, here's 20 minutes. I'm not getting back. You know, so there's that. And of course, you know, I love my fans. I have this super hot demographic of ladies between the ages of 65 and 85, you know, and no, I'm just kidding. No, I'm not kidding at all. But no, I love my fans. I love when somebody comes up and they actually know what I've been doing, and you know, because some of these kids, you know, they weren't born when I started doing this, and I'm not even like a Steve Gordon or I don't know who the hell, but you know, some of these folks have really made money.
Have you always thought that paying attention to, the afterlife or being spiritual or having questions relating to that is stupid? Or is this kind of a new thing?
Oh, no, 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 no. That's not what I meant by that.
Okay.
I mean, sometimes people ask questions that are going to be impossible to answer, and it's like if you're on the fence about whether there's another life ahead or you get another shot at it,
Mm-hmm.
like you put in some more coins in the video machine or whatever.
Yeah.
That's not I don't think that's the way it works, but so you have to make, even though you may be reborn or whatever, but what I'm talking about is it's important to think about these things, but it's more important to take action.
Mm-hmm.
So what actions are you going to take? What sort of habits in your own life? How are you going to be perceived by others? And the fundamentals in what I do tell my children and what I tell other people that are maybe thinking about going into the film industry, for example, which I don't recommend, but is show up on time, number one. And that really, really is important. That first 15 minutes is not yours. I used to think this working at the bike shop. But that was a different time, different world, but it is so important. But it means that you're taking the other person seriously, and sometimes it doesn't matter that you be specifically on time. It's like, you have to gauge everything, because if you just focus on that one thing, then other things are going to be lost. But
Mm-hmm.
but being on time, doing, saying what you're going to do, like, I can do this, instead of like faking it. And, oh yeah, sure, I know what you mean, and then not know what you mean, and then go and fuck something up, put diesel in the truck when it's a gas or whatever,
Yeah.
or vice versa, that kind of shit. That's dumbass. Like, you should have talked about it stuff, you should have just looked stupid for a second. And that's another problem. It's like when I go into a store, I go, hey, can you find such that? Well, I don't know, we don't really do that, and they're so much more concerned about getting in trouble themselves
Mm-hmm.
over a decision they've made rather than actually help me. So they would totally ask me to fuck off and instead of getting in trouble. And so the management system in these places are really toxic, and this happens all over town, but I see it, and conversely, I also see the super positive vibe places, the folks who are really have strong intentions to be a humanistic experience, and that is a commodity these days. That is also, being nice is a commodity. People really appreciate it. So when you're on the phone with someone and you are really, you're calling them by the name, or you're acknowledging them, and your problems are your problems, and you're not putting it on them and stuff. Oh my God, they'll just fucking roll over for you, and so kill them with kindness,
Well, I like what you said about people are afraid to look stupid, because
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I think that maybe it comes from a sense of efficiency for me. So if I'm going to a grocery store, if I'm going to an outlet store and I know exactly what I want, I'm not going to wander around and look for that thing. I'm going to look for an employee first and ask where it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I guess in that way, I'm right there with you with looking stupid.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, now here's the other side. I'm not being the devil's advocate here, but going into Home Depot, for example, I would probably not. I have a little joke about asking where something is, because whenever somebody walks up to me and asks me if they can help me and stuff, I'm really skeptical, and I go, well, I'm looking for them. And then he goes, well, I think that's over in plumbing. And plumbing is like, halfway down the world from where I was or whatever. So I go down there.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, it's not there. And it's not like they're wrong all the time, but it's kind of like, again, you have 100,000 items, also in the grocery store, they move that shit around all the time. I know where everything is. I know how everything's categorized. It's my sort of OCD or whatever, my cataloging of everything, and so I don't trust people to tell me the truth, you know. And so, but with directions, if I don't have a map, if I don't specifically know, absolutely ask. I would never too proud to ask for help. You know, I just want to make sure that I've fulfilled my initial obligations, right?
Mhm.
Of figuring it out for myself. But again, it's just my attitude, and I've got this barrier around. I'm an island, and I don't want people coming into my zone and not being able to help me, but they won't admit to it, and it's like, well, what are you going to do with that? And it's like, I don't want to get into it right now, because like I use all this stuff at Home Depot for things that it's not meant for. You make fluted columns out of pipe insulators. You make and sonotubes, and put schmutz on it, and there you go. You got a cement column, fluted column. There's all these things that you can utilize, and you just don't want to have that conversation with the guy.
Do you think it's difficult for you to trust people in general?
Oh yeah, definitely. I don't trust people.
Why is that?
Well, just I'm not gonna, I guess, subject them to I don't know, some. It's usually the when I really think that there's other reasons, and there usually is. And so people like, I've had this happen with like political campaigns. Somebody who's working on the campaign sort of knows me and will basically kind of take a little bit of advantage of my generosity. Like, I'll give them a bunch of stuff for the thing, and then they'll come back.
They'll want more.
They'll kind of want more without really asking, that like they did the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of, it hurts a little bit, because I kind of want to be their friend, but I'm like either too old or too creepy, or something doesn't fit. It's like, then they don't trust me. It's like, well, what do you want? You want to, do you want to smash me? Do you want to? It's like, no. It's like, I want to have a meaningful, like, if somebody's really smart and they seem smart, I can learn something. I want to kind of be hanging with those guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very selective about who I hang out with, because I don't want really any side swipes. I don't want any drama, conflicts necessarily. Intellectual processes can be conflicts, but like my band, it's kind of a pickup. My son's in the band. But we have been flowing through musicians, and we've been slowly sculpting this thing. It's beautiful. It's not. It's like we all kind of want similar things. We don't want to break this scene open and go on tour in the States or anything. It's just like the process of making and creating music and all that kind of stuff. We sort of like we found sort of this common
Mm-hmm.
area that we can work within. And it really is for ourselves, I wouldn't mind playing out, but it is much more for our own experiences.
Do you feel like your son has to talk you into certain things, trusting certain people, or is he guarded like you are?
I think, I don't know. I think he has a little anxiety about social situations and stuff. But he's very, very gregarious, and he had bartender at the Roadhouse. Do you know my son?
I don't think so, no.
Yeah, Shane has been a bartender at the Roadhouse for, I think, a year, something like that.
And this is the Spinard Roadhouse, correct?
Yeah. And so I have all these parents, basically, of my peers, parents that they have kids that went to school with Shane in elementary school, Chugach optional or whatever, and so I get these reports. It's like, we were in the Roadhouse the other day, and we talked to your son Shane, and he's such a fine gentleman, and all these really accolades. And I couldn't be prouder, you know. I mean, I kind of feel like I was a bit of a hard ass with him when he was growing up, but I hated those little spoiled little fuckers who would just like walk all over their moms or whatever it was. You know, it's like, fuck, that ain't going down. I'm too old school for that, you know. And so anyway, yeah, it's a good question, Cody. I, I think that, you know, we see each other every week at practice and occasionally some more. We have a pretty good line of conversations, but then he definitely has his own life that he doesn't tell me about, and I don't ask him about, you know. So there is a boundary, I think, a good boundary there. He wants to. My daughter's in Texas, where my sisters live, and you know, she wants to make a life for her own, you know, and I see that. I wanted that too when I was 20 or whatever, you know. But and that was a bold kind of move for me, because it was just me and my dad. And my dad went back to Texas when I was 18, and I just made the decision right then that I was going to stay up here.
Mm-hmm. In Alaska.
Yeah, yeah, and I had no family, you know, it was just me. And short time after that, I met Marie, my wife of today. We've been together about 40 years, and yeah.
What was that like, staying back in Alaska while your dad, you know, went back to, where was it?
Texas.
Texas.
It was not a scene that I was interested in. I gave up a lot of money going down there every once in a while, because nobody would ever come up here. But you know, I tried to sort of keep the connection or relationship alive, you know, as best I could afford. But I felt very liberated, because I was kind of raising my dad when I was going through high school. He suffered from cataracts and also suffered from drinking too much whiskey, and pretty much debilitated. You know, really is basically blind some of the time. And but yeah, he was a mess, and somehow he managed to live another fucking 20 years or something. I couldn't believe it, but I it was a weight off my shoulders, because I was the typical child of an alcoholic. You know, they just don't have it together. They're borrowing money from you,
Mm-hmm.
and just bullshit. You know, and I wasn't much better. I mean, right after like that whole sort of dark sort of teens of dealing with my dad, I started working at the Cauldron. The Cauldron was this hotsy-totsy place in 1979. 80, 82 was probably the extent of its heyday. They would have people out the door, soup and sandwich. They made their own bread and stuff. And Paul Colbert was the owner, part owner, and he was really into metaphysics. And so he taught me about metaphysics and about meditation, and I kind of stuck with it on some level ever since. And you know, I was strict. I stopped eating meat. I eat eggs and dairy and stuff, but I'm still a vegetarian, and I feel really, you know, I think that was a really good decision. I'm not a fancy vegetarian, you know, but I feel like you know, we can eat on a lot less. You know, we can survive on a lot less from what we consume. So I'm getting into it. I've got the garden out front. It's really cool. You know, I'm horrible growing the vegetables. You know, I love to cook and everything, but yeah, it's kind of good going back.
You said that you weren't a fancy vegetarian. What does that mean? What are you making?
A lot of complete proteins, like beans and rice. I'm really heavy into soups and curries, Thai food, Indian food, big time into that. Khichdi is one of my favorite kind of. It's a great hangover remedy. It's just mung beans and rice with vegetables, but it's got a mess of ginger and garlic and spice to it. I think those are really great foods to have, because they give you energy. You know, it's light on your feet, and man, if you know anything about the meat industry. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I just, I can't eat farm shrimp. Can you eat farm shrimp? Can you eat tilapia? No, I cannot. That is my, that's my Dr. Seuss book. Will you eat farm shrimp? Will you eat tilapia? No, I will not. They have been eating poop all day, and I will not eat that. It's kind of like, yeah, that's weird. This guy told it perfectly. We have all this beautiful black lean cod up here, and we sell it to Japan, and then we give our own people tilapia fish sticks, in return. And in return, we ship off all this beautiful wild red salmon, and then in return, we get this Atlantic pink puke that they call fish, And it's like, why would you trade out? And you know why? Because it tastes like something. It has taste to it. People don't like wild salmon because it has a taste. And that should tell you about Idiocracy America. It's like people are just into the mac and cheese. My kids wouldn't eat anything other than orange, growing up. It's like cheddar cheese, mac and cheese, eggs, white tortillas, no greens, no reds, no nothing, Yeah, I don't know. I really was into restaurants. I was really into this whole idea of entertaining, and I love the art of the bartending. I used to be a bartender, and I tell you, a lot of the wind came out of my sails when I worked on that Willowa project. I was not the architect. I was not like any real player, even though I was I consulted for the time of their development.
And this is Willowa Social downtown,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah.
Okay.
I also designed the inside of Flat Top Pizza and did the mural for Humpy's in the back. That's kind of got started with Humpy's in '94,
Mm-hmm.
and did a bunch of stuff for them that you can see still, and continued to do the Flat Top. And then Willowa was going to be my masterpiece, but I was working against too many conservative minds that basically wanted to open up a really big Humpy's, and that's kind of what they did. And it kind of kicked them in the ass, kind of almost sunk Humpy's. They went into bankruptcy. It was horrible. And a lot of people didn't get paid, and I think they finally squared that away. But it was just such a monumental task. It was an amazing idea, and I think it's still finding its identity and stuff. But I still get sick to my stomach every time I walk in that place because of all of the turmoil and fighting against, just the way they treated people. And just, it's just, people have to be treated like human beings. I mean, it's like this real kind of fear brigade, the boss down, it's like this it's just not a good environment. Because after studying what these cool restaurants do, like having staff meals, even if it's like cheap ingredients or whatever, everybody sits down and are human for a few minutes, and connect. Even in when they were testing out the menus, they would make one thing, right? They would make one shrimp platter, one sandwich. And there were like 27, 30 people, 30 people at this menu tasting, and you were supposed to taste this. So like, say, what if you were number 25 and you came upon the sandwich? I mean, it's just a mess, right? And it's like you're supposed to eat after like a couple of dozen people and feel okay about it, instead of sitting down with smaller groups, really getting the feedback with the dishes. They were trying to, just do it on the fly. And that's the world we live in today. It's so pragmatic, it's so in a rush to make money.
So, perfect world scenario, you have as much money as you need, unlimited amount of money. What type of restaurant / venue would you create?
Right. Well, there's a book called Bar Tartine, and it's a closed restaurant, so I have to, full disclosure. And it was beyond a slow food movement. Basically, what they would do is buy low and sell high. They would buy when the beets were in season. They would go buy in the calendar year. So they'd buy a bunch of beets, and they would process these beets and make beet powder, dried beets, beet chips, and store them in their larder. And if you could say multiply that by 1,000 different things, that's what they were doing. And so they have all of these powders and all of these mixes that they add to their soups and their dishes that created this amazing flavor profile without really going with this Scottish venison or some exotic rare ingredient that had to be air freighted or whatever. So it would be local. It would be slow. For me, I would just, no apologies, make it a vegetarian restaurant. And I know everybody would be rolling their eyes huge, but guess what? This has worked in other places. There was a French guy, and I actually walked past this place when I was in Paris, and the risotto was a fucking $100. I mean, there's no shit. Dinner here is like a $500 bill, pretty sure. And the guy just, no meat, and he went totally vegetarian. And now he's doing fish now, but it totally shocked everybody. But he was amazingly successful because he was so creative in his approach. So,
Paris is a completely different story because it has the population to sustain something like that.
Absolutely.
Does it ever frustrate you that Anchorage might not have the population to sustain new progressive ideas?
Well, I mean, when I got here, there were 75,000 people. So I look around and go, where did all these people come from?
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like we are reaching some kind of critical mass. I get your question, or I get what you're saying, and yes, I'm frustrated, not just about that, but about even though I surround myself with good intended people, there's the rest of them, and some of the things I see on these feeds, when it comes to an event on Channel 11 or something, and the homeless population and the horrible things they say about individuals. I mean, that's the world sort of like we're entertaining right now, and so that part is really, really frustrating. And I do think, like, I have an idea for a cargo bike, delivery company in Midtown, and I want to pursue this. I don't have a lot of capital, but I am going to pursue it. And the virus has got me going, because I'm working on all of these. I'm working on a bicycle RV in theory, in a drawing. I've worked on restaurants like that. I add it all up. I put all the pieces together, and it's like a place that has incredible intrinsic values. It's not necessarily about the money. I think the money always follows the good intended idea. If you're bringing forward value, bringing forward, like, this is your best version of the food and of service and everything, everybody's going to recognize that. And it's not like some secret ingredient or a twist. It's just that old-fashioned love, connect, kind of stuff. And people know that it works because they're still doing it,
Mm.
And I think that I have a song about shortcuts. I think that we want to shortcut a lot of stuff. People call themselves photographers when they just own a camera, right? And they think they have a good eye, which they may, but it's kind of like calling yourself a poet or calling yourself a philosopher. It's a term better used by someone else describing you. And
You got to put in the work.
You got to do the work.
Yeah.
You have to put in the work. You have to fail. You have to look stupid, and it's not like, I'm going to go out and really look stupid, and be a spectacle. But, it's like the innocence of thinking that you can succeed when it's a bridge too far, and art is constantly like that. I'm only now getting to a place where I'm like, fucking, this is cool. I can't wait to get back starting on this painting, because I'm like really truly into it. It's working out the way I want it.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because I've messed up so many other pieces, or incompleted, so many other things. So, and that there's that show 60,000 hours. They say 10,000 hours and you kind of can know it. Well, there's this 60,000 hour, I guess it's a Japanese thing, but that's more like 30 years, 40 years. And this one guy was just a knife sharpener, and that's all he did, and I learned how to sharpen a knife from this guy, and I can sharpen knives now. And there's a little something to it, but it's great to have sharp cooking knives.
Mm-hmm.
But think of like what it takes to go on a ramp, 30 years, 40 years of this one specific thing. Art's way different than that, in the sense that, the scope of work is different. You're painting objects, you're designing, you're designing things, or, I have a lot of different ways I work, my cartoon stuff, or my landscape, or my figurative work, life drawing kind of stuff. But again, you're implementing more or less the same, the same thing. You're paying attention, and especially when you're drawing from life, when you're in an outdoor painting situation, you really are still. You have to stay. Your head has to stay still, literally, in order to do the work. Because what you're doing is you're locking your body in one position and flicking your eyes back and forth between the object and your painting. And the more you flick it back and forth, the more you can see how wonky something is and how you can change it, and how you sort of like determine whether or not you're on the right track. Because everything's, has all these relationships that you have to look at.
How many hours do you think you've put into your art?
Well, I mean, I started when I was like in third grade, and I fumbled really hardcore for, the first 20 years. And when I was in my early 20s, I really started taking, well, in my teens, I airbrushed t-shirts, and in my early 20s, I started understanding all the rock album art, all of the chrome letters and airbrush techniques called hyperrealism. And I was really into, there's some famous Japanese airbrush artists who were into this super hyper realistic imagery. And so I was in that, cutting out friskets and delicately applying my inks and such. And, and then I started doing the theater stuff. And so even though I was working a lot, I wasn't generating a lot of work. I was messing up a lot, and I was throwing a lot of shit away,
Mm-hmm.
or I wasn't very satisfied with stuff. It would take me like 6 months to do something, whereas, the same painting might take me 3 weeks or something. My average on a painting that has a lot of features and details is usually 2 or 3 weeks.
And that's now.
And that's now.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's a lot of layers. That's like a bunch of paintings on top of each other that create one painting. You're sort of like going back over it, reinstating, and it's a very slow kind of process. But to me, that's what makes something look like something,
Mm-hmm.
something permanent. A painting. When you see a painting, you go to Credit Union 1 in Mountain View, and it is behind plastic, but it is a 6-foot by 6-foot painting of the Mountain View car wash, and a guy riding a bike with no hands, and a guy riding his bike pulling a kayak behind it, and some other crazy shit. And that took me about a month. That was working at it really hard. But I figured I did as much work in the last 10 years as I have probably in my whole life.
What motivated you to start drawing the streets and businesses on Spinard?
At first, it was out of maybe a copy of Whale Fat Follies. How I saw White Keys create Spinard as a brand.
Mr. White Keys.
Yeah, Mr. White Keys. And so I saw his show as branding Spinard, and that what got me going as a young man. I got a camera when I was in my early 20s, and I started taking pictures of Chilcoots and these shabby looking places, and and then Hog Brothers and stuff. So I was slowly kind of attracted to this, the Ashcan artists like Edward Hopper was one of my first loves. It's like warts and all. And that's getting back to the truth of things,
Mm-hmm.
even though I like to romanticize in a way parts of Spinard, something that looks shitty and making it look beautiful, without lying about it, and trying to see the beauty in things, right? And people take kind of things for granted.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I think that that's what got me started, and then I started kind of exploiting it, like downtown, the Club Paris. I probably painted that 2 or 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
I've painted the lagoon maybe 5 times from different places.
Westchester Lagoon, right?
Westchester Lagoon, and different things I go back to, not just because I think it would sell, but sometimes sometimes I feel really kind of like desperate or something. So here goes the 4th Avenue painting again, or here comes, I try to look at it, and I've done it differently, so I don't know what I'm complaining about. It's just like I run out of stuff to do, and this is what led me to the scootering, because I was able to, go fast anywhere I wanted,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't like on a bike. When I was on my bike, I have this habit of like looking at the road. I'm looking at every rock, every pebble. I'm not looking up and looking around. With the scooter, you're an upright position. You're like tugging on the throttle a little bit, and then you can see everything. And go as slow as you want.
Mm-hmm.
So now my mind starts categorizing patterns. I start thinking of repetitive things that I see, and I make note of it. It's like, there it is again, there it is again. And then, so slowly I'm building not only my navigational map, like if I'm somewhere, I know exactly, how to get out of that mess or whatever. I'm still getting a little lost sometimes because the subdivisions are just squirrely. They go all over. There's cul-de-sacs. Like, I don't know if we talked about the cul-de-sac thing.
We didn't know.
Well, we have a lot of them.
Yeah.
And I have a saying: when you fix one thing, you break another. And so, great intentions, everything, you usually end up fucking something else up.
So do you have something against cul-de-sacs?
Yeah, I do.
What is it?
It says go away. It says, end of the road, please do not come. And so do not drive through my neighborhood is what it says to me. And this is how we fix it. Okay, I get it. I've got a 3-street. I live on Woodland Park. It's a 3-street for the neighborhood. A lot of, used to be worse, but now it's kind of mellowed out. But yeah, guys go speeding down my street. I don't really care for it that much. But it is it's just my opinion. I'm sure there are things that have been written about it, like the feng shui of it
Mm-hmm.
is probably horrible. I'm just going to guess. It just, like, without even looking at the book on this, I'm just going to say probably horrible. And it's for those reasons, because when you turn that corner, is this a street or is this a little tit? And it's only to put more houses in a certain area too. So it jams it up from the view of the sky. You can see how close these roof lines are together. So it is kind of an efficiency of sorts,
What's interesting about cul-de-sacs that I never thought of until my wife and I were living in Reno for college, and we showed up to her friend's house, and they lived in a cul-de-sac, and we just parked in the middle of the cul-de-sac because that's that's right. How we have always been familiar with cul-de-sacs, is you just park in the middle of them here in Alaska. Yeah. And so we parked in the middle of it, went into her friend's house, and first thing they said is, why did you just park in the middle of our cul-de-sac?
It's like an Alaska thing.
Yeah. And we didn't even think twice about it. So, I guess they like their cul-de-sacs to be clean. They don't like anything in the middle. So we went outside and moved her car to the curb.
That's hilarious. Well, I heard of these places where you can't have a pickup truck out front or something. It's like, what the fuck? Okay, I see that. Pickups are ugly. It's like there's some like aesthetical thing of like, it's the last thing I want to see. It's like, is this your problem? Is this what's like stopping you from living? Oh shit, it's hilarious.
Yeah, my buddy, I went on a walk with him the other day, and he was telling me about how him and his girlfriend are renovating their house. So they just rented a dumpster. And so this person was delivering the dumpster, and as he was like lining up to back up the dumpster, you already know where I'm going with this, right?
Yeah, I do.
he kind of had to stop in the neighbor's yard, and the neighbor just lost it, and I guess the dumpster was only there, like there was a couple wheels on the guy's grass, and the guy lost his mind. He came out, took pictures of it, took pictures of the car, and was just kind of flipping out. And the car was only there for a couple minutes, and then, it was moved into my friend's driveway, and there's the trash can.
I thought you were going to say somebody ran up and put some trash in it.
Oh, no.
There we go. Fresh one. All right. Thanks.
Well, that is kind of weird though, isn't it? So whenever I'm walking around and say it's trash day, right? And I see somebody's trash can is out front of their house, or what, I'm downtown. And so if I have a piece of trash in my pocket, or if I finish a drink or whatever, I'll just open a random trash can and throw it away. And whenever I'm with a friend, it happens pretty often. They're like, you can't do that. I'm like, it's trash. Why wouldn't I be able to do that? But at the same time, I guess that trash can is that person's property. And it's kind of like that idea of ownership, right? It's like, get out of my space.
Right. Well, this is property. So, getting back to the Black Lives Movement thing, it's like you can, kill people and maim them and everything else, but man, steal a fucking candy bar from a Walmart, fucking everybody loses their mind. I don't quite get the looting. I don't think it's really helpful for obvious reasons. It's kind of a short term kind of fuck you. But this whole idea of property, this woman, a few weeks back, there was this big, beautiful black woman talking about, I don't give a fuck about the Football Hall of Fame. You can, it's like, this has got to stop. It's like, you guys are losing your mind over property, but you let the cops do all this shit to us. Fuck you.
And you're talking about systemic racism and police brutality.
Yes. And so because of this property issue, and then it's like, a thing that dawned on me is like, none of this is ours. I mean, we don't own any of this. And so if you don't own property, if you can't get a loan for a house because the federal government has been racially profiling you, then, you don't know what that's like. You don't know the feeling of like, this is mine, I'm going to take care of it and all this kind of stuff. It's like you're always kind of on the losing end of that stick. And, it is hard for people like this guy with the grass. This is how tightly wound we are. And I like to call it neurosis, I really do, because I think it is a kind of a mental illness, kind of like hoarding money is kind of like a mental illness that we allow to happen. There's the context that we all have to look at. What is the history between your friend and this guy? Is this guy strictly upset just because it's his grass? And, has this happened before or something along those lines? Mm-hmm. So that context is also important to look at. Now, this guy does sound like a Karen and should be dealt with as such. I'm really happy about this because, as a catering bartender for years, catering all these lawyer offices and these private parties and stuff, you go into these rich people's homes and you think, oh man, they're living the life. Literally, one time it was several $1 million home. in this rosewood sort of cabineted kitchen, there was nothing but Taco Bell bags, and there was absolutely no food in any of those cupboards. It was just all empty cupboards, just, and then the garage is just kind of littered, strewn with, last year's shit they bought, and they just kind of, they don't have anything together. It's like they have the same kind of problems as people without money do, and money doesn't fix it, I guess is kind of what I'm trying to say here. But the attitude that they have, you're the servant, and all of a sudden, you're theirs, and that sucks.
What's always interesting to me about ownership and property and money is that you never can own anything. Nothing is ever permanent, right? Unless you are extremely wealthy and you set up a trust, and that money can go on into kind of
perpetuity.
Exactly. Say me and my wife have $1 million and we both die, and that $1 million, and we don't have any spouse, or we don't have any kids, that money is just going to go to the bank, or it's going to go, all of that we worked for our entire life is just gone. And so this weird sense of entitlement that comes with money and ownership and property is just a facade.
Yeah. Well, it's the neurosis that the hoarding component of this is the attachment, right? It's the complete attachment to this money, to this object. It's mine, and to define that is to define the immature mind, the arrested development person. I worked hard for that. That was my money. I saved up. I'm feeling violated, and I've had things stolen from me, and by God, I was hot about it. And it wasn't. It was, in fact, the object, my bike, that was kind of irreplaceable. It also was the violation. It was the intrusion. It was the sideswipe for me. And people, I think, are traumatized in this way.
And were you talking about an accident?
I'm talking about when my bike was stolen.
Okay.
And I'm talking about the guy with the grass, too. So the guy with the grass, he's kind of traumatized, right? He has this kind of built up thing. Now, maybe, like I said, maybe there's history, and which caused maybe more of a thing. I don't know, but that could be a potential thing. But this guy, just to say, he's upset about the grass being destroyed, and he wants common sense, and he doesn't want the guy just shooting off, and then he's stuck with bad grass. But there's a lot more going on there to unpack. This guy, he's really quick to feel violated. He's defensive. These things add up to a scared child, in a way. Mm-hmm. And they're not dealing with it. Like, he doesn't care about your relationship or his relationship with his neighbor, because he's ready to double down right now. He's not fostering a bridge. He's tearing that fucking bridge apart by taking pictures, and he doesn't trust him that he's going to be compensated, or, this will go unnoticed or undone, and this is, I think, what gets people all stirred up. They want justice. They want that right now, and nobody's going to fucking take advantage of them. So what's happening in the rest of his life that made him kind of get there? Is it the military? Is it is it Catholic school? Is it, is it these values that were, ingrained in him that keep him where he's at? And like you say, you can't take it with you when you go. The same thing with transient nature of life itself, the here and now. It is constantly in flux. And the more we ride with that fluxation, the more we're in rhythm with it, and the less likely we're going to be surprised from it. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I'm looking at my notes here, and I have this question written down about nostalgia. And you had mentioned nostalgia early on in our conversation, and I didn't mean to switch gears on you here, but I wanted to kind of get this question in before I forgot. Yeah. So are you ever nostalgic for past versions of Anchorage or past versions of Spenard?
Yes, but it also includes the past humanity, the past innocence. And back before, like, 1,000 heartbreaks ago, I would just be immediately in love with whatever. I would trust maybe more, a little more, and say, well, sure, let's do that, and just that openness and the simplicity of not being, under the bills, or like, child rearing, 20 years of child rearing, you're always kind of coming in second for the most part with that. But yeah, nostalgia. It is more, before you said the thing that you regretted. It's like in the moments of arguments and stuff. I've been very careful not to name call to the point. I've certainly been apologetic for conversations I've had with my spouse and stuff. Getting too hot about stuff. But I never got over that barrier of, like, saying something really contemptuous, and where you draw that new line. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where you go really far, and even though there might be forgiveness, it will never, ever be the same.
You already said it.
Right.
Yeah, it's said.
And
it's
so
out
you
there.
can't, exactly. And that's what I feel about nostalgia. It's before those times, before you got real shitty and did this X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that way, I've been trying to capture this Alaskan kitsch, but as I research, like, the cool map, tablecloth covers, and the cool things, they're littered with racist, iconography, Billikens, Eskimos, and igloos, and this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's not what I want to bring back. That's not, but it's the art. It's the way in which the things were done before computers. It's the line weight of the drawing. It's the style, and that's what I'm kind of nostalgic about. Is I wanted to bring back Alaska in this kind of, like, earlier version of it, where people could be reminded of how kind of excited everybody was to be up here.
And you came to Alaska in 1969, right?
71.
1971.
Yeah.
So I feel like everyone has their own coming to Alaska story, and and they all have the same combination of elements, be it escapism or adventure. How did you end up in Alaska?
Well, I just kind of just summarize just real. The first time, I'm writing my second comic book a little bit about this, but my dad was a car salesman, and we did okay. We were in apartments in San Antonio, and just living. He was raising us 3 kids, and I'm the youngest of 3, and we got this ranch, and he it was a bridge too far. Basically, the rent was pretty high. He thought he was be able to stable horses. It was 360 acres. It had a swimming pool, all this stuff. And anyway, it didn't work out. He drank too much. He didn't make any money. He spent a lot of money. He wasn't selling cars because he was out at the ranch. And then we all folded and went back to the apartment living. And super broke. He still owed people money. And he got a job on the slope. And he didn't know anything. He just had a Texas accent. They thought he was a oil guy. And bam, got a job. Made some money. Paid off his debts. His relationship with his second wife, kind of broke up, and my 2 older sisters, they didn't have any interest in coming, so it was just me and him. Move on top of Darwin's, and there was 2 apartments up there.
Darwin's theory, right?
Right. It was Ruthie's 49er at the time, and it had no windows in the front. It was strictly for day drinkers. It smelled like Anchorage. I have this photographic memory of how it looked. It's amazing. And it's a great dive bar now, but it was my first experience with a babysitter. I was 12. I didn't really need babysitting per se, but she had art supplies. She was from New York City. She genuinely took me in as her own child. and just loved me to death. And I blossomed. You know, I was drawing everything downtown. I was just going nuts. You know, I would sell my pieces in front of the log cabin for like $1 or $2. They were kind of shitty, just mountains and stuff, but people felt sorry for me. And so I would go down to Orange Julius, which was underneath the Spiral Penny's parking garage. And they had pinball machines, and all the cool kids would be there. So for the first time in my life, I actually had walking around money. And I was walking around, and I was feeling it. You know, it was really great. So that was really solidified me as an artist. I'm going to do this. But for the next, 5 or 6 or so years, I was subjected to my dad's sort of craziness or whatever. So, I managed, definitely, but, it was me working, 25, 30 hours a week and going to high school, not really having a social life, not really being able to bring anybody home, and say, oh, here's my dad. He's in his underwear on the couch, so on, so forth. So,
what did that craziness, your dad's craziness, look like?
Well, it wasn't that exciting. He just, basically, when he was up here, he didn't really commit super big crimes. It was just like his sight wasn't very well. He was drinking. He was a maintenance man at Inlet Towers, and I washed windows there and worked at Family Market across the street. We lived in this little 1-bedroom apartment. He'd sleep on the couch. He gave me the bedroom, and I went to West High and really didn't have any friends, and I would paint my room some. I was just very depressed. And so his craziness was just crazy making. He wasn't really being a dad at all. I would have to help him find his contact lens, or he was just always in need of aid, and he wasn't really making many good choices for himself.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was difficult at 15, trying to fit in and everything, and then have this sort of albatross of sorts. And this kind of went on for the next couple of years. We were homeless. We lived in a car lot for a little bit. He finally hit bottom, and I had to kind of deal with that, just seeing somebody in DTs, man, it's just fucked up.
I bet.
Going super hallucinations, and it's just not fun at all.
And that was his bottom, was hallucinations and DTs.
Yeah, he was in the hospital for like a week. Shortly after that, I had an appendicitis, from the stress, I think, basically. But, that was my last semester of high school, and I worked really hard that spring, and I had a little extra spending money, and I went up to Palmer, and I'd never felt so free in my life. Me and my buddy went to this bar. Drinking age was 19 at the time, and he wanted some modifications done on his drawings for this strip mall in Palmer, and let me camp out in his yard for a couple of weeks. And I just can't explain how joyful that was, just being out from underneath school and just having my life in front of me. It was just wow, and I didn't have to have any regard to dad or what was going to happen. He moved down to Texas, and it was just me. So yeah, that's and I'm kind of mulling all of this over for my comic book. I've been doing some really cool drawings about. We would go to this ranch in Laredo, and my dad really wanted to be a cowboy. It's kind of what it all adds up to. But I'm just so happy that I have a family up here, and it's like Alaska is like Biosphere 3. You got one piano tuner, you got and that's fine. You don't have to fight for position, right? You just can be and do what you want, right? And you can participate. You don't have to be sidelined. In larger cities, there's a lot of momentum and stuff, but oftentimes you're very sidelined, and it's only for the cool kids and stuff, and maybe it happens here. I mean, I certainly would say that to some extent with the artists up here. If you're more of an outsider artist, even though I'm well known, I am sort of an outsider artist. I didn't go to art school. People who went to art school are really good grant writers, it seems like. They know all that administrative stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and I hate all of that stuff. I don't want to participate in it. I did the Rasmussen grant. I got it the very first year, 2005, $3,500, and then went for the fellowship 3 times. And I know it was just what I wanted. They just didn't see it. And, every time I got rejected, I would just get totally shit-faced and just totally depressed for weeks. I would just, and I talked to other people too, and they had the same kind of effect, and it's like, wow, this is just not worth it. It's like, I'm not mature enough to handle the rejection.
Do you have any theories about why you didn't get it?
Well, the comments are pretty smarmy that you get. These reviewers that review the applications, they can say some pretty sort of cutting things. I was really stubborn. I wanted to go to Paris and study on my own, and it just looked like a vacation to them. And I think that was number one. I had this other idea of making a half-inch scale model of Northern Lights in Spinard and putting model cars in that, taking photographs, and then creating paintings based on these photographs that I would include people inside the cars, and that would be the sort of narrative of the painting, is all of the drama and all of the activity and personal stories that are going on with each car. And so somebody from Seattle wouldn't know the corner of Northern Lights and Spinard is the epicenter of the community, and that it had significance. They thought it was too much money for such a project, and that they kind of sort of laughed, scoffed at it. But I didn't support my argument enough. I didn't give them examples of what I was talking about. I look now back on it, and it's like I probably wouldn't have given them the money either. But you know what I did do, and it was happenstance, is Eric Croft commissioned me to do the Spinardian painting. And so I did the Spinardian painting. It took 3 or 4 years to get up and do it, but I made prints of that. And then within the first 2 weeks or 3 weeks of doing that, I sold 100 prints at $100. I basically got a Rasmussen grant via this print that everybody was crazy about. And so I took that money, and we planned to go to Europe anyway, but it made it just a lot easier to do that.
Because it was your money. You weren't beholden to anybody.
Exactly. And that brings up another really good point. Every time you get money from the Rasmussen, they invite you to come on stage, and they get to fucking do a self-congratulatory, like, look what we did for these poor saps. And so you get to walk out, and then you have to say, oh, the Rasmussen grant, that's really cool. Those guys are really great. Thank you, and suck their cock one more time. I think that you don't have, I don't think you should have to have an application. You fucking know who I am by now. I've filled out that fucking form 3 or 4 times now, and I, hat in hand, fucking bragging. So you want me to beg, you want me to brag about what I do and put me in the best light. And then once I get the money, then you want me to come out and be a notch in your belt, And I started seeing that. I was like, at first I was very flattered. I was, I get to go and you've seen the Academy Awards.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of fuck up thing is that? People self-congratulatory all night, like they're saving babies or something. It's like they're coming out with this shit, all the time, and they're thinking, oh, cinematic, masterpiece or whatever, and yeah, it's not.
Is it ever frustrating to you when you see who wins those fellowships or who are awarded those fellowships, and then you have outlasted them by tens of years?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, the number one is not only the who, because you're supposed to be happy for them, and most of the time I am happy for them. But when you get fellowships, and the folks may have shown other places, but when it comes to Alaska, they really haven't had many shows. And the fellowship is for people who are mid-career. That means 10 to 15 years into it. I kind of feel like, well, all the other boxes checked off. They were a person of color. They were a nice looking woman, fit nicely on their postcard, Not only the art itself, but the woman or the man behind it is like a brand, and they're branding this idea. And, I can't help but think, being sort of like a boomer, like all the boxes are unchecked for me. I'm sort of a white dude. Yeah. And, he's not educated, and, he's kind of breaking the rules in a way, I just feel like nobody really cares, and so why should I care that nobody cares about whether or not I get one or whatever, it's like, that doesn't make any sense. I think it's just feeling sad about it in the most embarrassing way possible, kind of feeling like, well, who's really delusional here? I mean, yeah, what have you brought to the table, etc. It's like, because I'm so chip on my shoulder kind of a guy, that, I haven't really allowed for things to come my way or something, but I don't know, I'm definitely determined on staying the course, I guess. I don't like that term, but I'm not going to be sort of like moved by anyone's opinion, I guess,
One way I think you could look at it too is that you're doing it without anybody's help. I think that maybe when you get assistance or you get help monetarily from other people, it feels like you own it a little bit less. And since you've done it yourself, you own every single bit of it.
Right. And of course, my wife too. And that's what a lot of people will point to as well. It's like, your wife's a teacher. She's got the health insurance, it's got the salary, you don't have to worry about anything. But which is true on some level, but it's never been the arrangement, I mean, I fucking stress my ass off over everything all the time. So I made my money the hard way for sure. And a lot of times it is because my own limitation of what I think people are willing to spend. Like, you make an agreement, this size painting, it's of this, and I say a number, and then I spend like ungodly amounts of time on it, and then basically making minimum wage, or making, very not that much money. But I sidestep the embarrassing question, or the embarrassing, oh, it's going to be more money, or asking for more in the front end, And if it's somebody that I feel like can handle it more, I will certainly engage a better number. But like, if it's a friend of a family, like I did some portraits for a family, the kids, and it's difficult to charge them what I should charge them. It's not like they're broke, but it's more like I'm their uncle, and so that's a difficult situation, because when I hand off my little baby that I spent 3 weeks on, and get $500 for it, I go, there's something wrong here. And and especially getting back to the whole hoarder thing, where people, and when I say no, I don't know, but it's like they're not hurting for money, and it's more important for them to get a deal based on their neuroses, based on their what they get off on, and that's another thing that I don't think people understand about people that have money, are really, really into that. Not everybody, but man, when they can get a deal and they think that their position has helped that come around, like ever seen Red Belt? oh man, it's a Dave Mamet movie.
I don't think so.
Oh God, Tim the Tool Guy plays this Hollywood director, and he brings the main character's wife into their fold and promises them like all of this money, and if they make these kimonos out of this really expensive fabric, and the girl goes out, gets a shark loan, buys this fabric, and then like calls him back like 2 days later, whatever, and disappeared. Totally disappeared, and like they just got fucked, and she's like now on the hook for this money. It's like, working with Hollywood, I was laughing my ass off because that's exactly the way they come off, that they're so powerful and they're so rich that they are going to make life great for you and promise all this stuff and then exploit the fuck out of you. And where there's, you're working 16 hours a day for a flat rate, again, you might as well be working at Taco Bell. It's all about the deal. And then, once you start stiffening up and going, this is the price, they're in that position where they have to pay it. They don't have any choice. And it's the most difficult time to make the deal is in front of the job, because when in front of the job, everybody's making promises. You got the promise of making money. You've got the promise of this cool project. You got all these things that are looking great, great, great. You get into the project, all the parameters change, and then you're like stuck, in this Megillah.
You've mentioned Hollywood a few times. Do you have any experiences with Hollywood?
Oh yeah,
Or are you using it as
no.
Okay.
No, I worked on Into the Wild. I painted the bus for Into the Wild.
Okay.
And I was the on-set scenic, and so I got to travel down to California for parts of the movie. I got to go to the wrap party, did a little well, I can't really say what I did with Sean Penn, and but we were partying, basically. Let's just say that we were partying at this hotel, and I saw Hal Holbrook and Neil Hirsch, who played the thing. We weren't allowed to really talk to him during the performance because he was dieting really hardcore, and he looked like shit. But so that was the big experience. I did work on the whale movie, but it was really a horrible experience in contrast because I was at the armory painting set stuff like all day, and my boss was a real pill, and I survived it. It was, like I said, a really horrible experience.
Yeah.
And it got me out of it, got me out of the film thing, and like nothing else came after. Ted said something horrible about the oil patch. The guy in the movie, he said something horrible, and then all the legislators said, "We're not going to do any tax credits for you guys anymore," and they took away the tax credits for the movie, so there was only just the super exploitive TV shows, Discovery Channel, some of these that will come up and not rent a whole crew. You got long days and you get flat rates. It's not really lucrative. I've worked on probably 40 commercials, some of which were really giant Super Bowl type commercials. Some of these projects take a month. I did an international commercial for Corona, where I built a Trajanera, which is a flat bottom boat they have in Mexico City. And I've made an electric soapbox car that ran on batteries, and so working for Bradley Reed for the Goose, the AT&T Goose years ago. We were puppeteers for that. I built a shit ton of props for Bradley Reed, for Arco, and for the oil companies, where they would have kids usually in the commercial doing some stuff. But it was interesting. Got me places Alaska I wouldn't have gone. Helicoptered, in glaciers and stuff. And so it was paramilitary for sure, and very exciting, very adrenaline oriented, pretty exciting that way. But yeah, they're really, and they can be some good production companies too, which treat you fairly. They'll invite you to dinner, but those days are gone. Of actually inviting you to a meal at their hotel so they can talk about tomorrow or whatever. It's all kind of been shut down. And now, they're not really doing these big commercials anymore. You know, these things were like $1 million. They would rent the icebreaker and we'd go out. The guy who did Nirvana's video, Smells Like Teen Spirit, Sam Baer, he directed this one Sierra Mist commercial. And the first thing he did was pop in a new cassette of his video he did for Marilyn Manson. And it was this really gross thing, this guy eating this body and stuff. And it was like, everybody was like, oh, that's really cool. And again, it's just kind of the show. But, it's the hierarchy. You got 100 people working on these sets. You don't go up to the director and give him your ideas, stuff. Which sounds obvious, but no, it's not. For some, it's not. They think they're on some kind of guided tour. They got the camera. It's like put the camera down. It's a closed set. You're supposed to fucking be working. You're not like, oh, this is interesting. Shut up. And the Korean Santa down in Seward, that was really funny. In Korea, I guess the Santa theme is there's the main Santa with like the $200 beard, and then there's like the secondary Santas. They got the $20 beard in the background, right? So there's Santa helpers. But the theory was Santa was getting in his sleigh. One of the sled runners fall off, and he's crippled on the side of the road, and this limousine comes in. He calls somebody on this Korean cell phone, and this big stretch limo pulls up, and Santa gets in the limo. And so that's the joke or the tagline for the commercial. But working with these guys, oh my God, it was somebody's nephew who was directing it, and he was placing the camera like directly in front, never getting any 3/4 shots of the side and the front,
Mm-hmm.
And it's like what we call flat Stanley in the business, and he had no skills at all, and everybody was fucking having to listen to him, and it's like these little shit shows, but these shit shows do pay. Like when you're an international company, they walk around basically with $250,000 stuffed in their parka arm sleeve. And so when you give him the invoice, say my invoice for that was like $4,200. He's got this bundle of hundreds, and he thumbs through it and stops right in the middle, like a card shark or something. But basically, they're sequential $100 bills, and he's basically going to the number that is 42 and giving me the money. And here you go, And that is really sweet. That's when things are good.
Yeah, that's old school. I have one more question that I'm looking at right now, and I always love to hear old school stories about old school Alaska. And I was wondering if you wouldn't mind ending this podcast on a story or a memory that you feel is kind of quintessential or classic Spenard.
Okay, so old school story. God dang. Well, see, now I'm like, there's so many to sort of draw from. I mean, see, it's like, to kind of have a capsulization like in a hook. There's so many characters that have come in and out, of my life, and working at the bike shop for more or less 12 years and looking out that window across Northern Lights, and seeing multitude of kids who I thought were for sure going to die riding their bikes across that street,
Mm-hmm.
or just the activity. Like I did the Blaine's mural for, I think about 10 years. And again, that's just right on the corner of Spenard in Minnesota. And there would be 300 kids in that little area on the wall there. And the way people, are driving and doing and being on that corner for like a whole day, it's just amazing that not more people are dead, But, it's just, I don't know, there's a multitude of things come in. I guess maybe if you gave me a better parameter, old school means like, I think back on, the early days of Coots, which I was not a drinker back when I was a young adult, but how rough that place used to be, and how the guns would be pulled out, and it was a lot shakier. There were a lot more people, totally jacked up and ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there was a feeling that you could get away with more, back in the day, and now it's probably feels differently than that. I do think that people get used to operating on their own terms a lot up here, and when they get told to like wear a mask or something,
Mm-hmm.
they lose their shit.
For this current pandemic that we're in right now, right?
Yeah, yeah. I guess the whole thing of like I tell the story of the Spinard beauty contest that I was asked to be a part of, and I played a song for them, but I got disqualified. There was a part in it where you flick the bottle cap into the garbage can, and somebody had cut my bike shorts real short. And when I sort of knelt down to do that, I had a costume failure and totally got points taken off. So I got like third place in the contest. It was catastrophe.
And by costume failure, what exactly do you mean?
Or my nutsack fell out of one side of my shorts. Yeah, so it can happen to the best of them, So yeah. Anyway, I that was not part of the show actually, but I think the whole thing of living the street, for as long, and seeing the kind of the transitions, and for a long time I never had a car. It was just the bike and the scenes on the bike or the skateboard. The old school stuff to me is just there were just so much fewer people, and folks that it didn't, like a lot of my older acquaintances, there's always something up with them. It just seemed like they were trying to figure something out, and sort of like lost souls maybe, or something,
Okay.
but there was this like renewal, when you say like fleeing, when people come up here, they're fleeing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sometimes it is a part of fleeing, but it's also a part of arriving, to your life, arriving to this place of freedom. And your parents aren't here, and that kind of thing. And then now you get to kind of, here it is, do with it what you want. And again, getting back to that kind of opportunity, we do have a twin identity. At night, Anchorage, I think, becomes a very dangerous place. And being that I'm usually tucked in bed by then, I don't exactly know this. I have never had any kind of, been mugged or any sort of. My last scuffle was, I think I was 14, at West High, and that was it, But people, I hear stories. It's like, oh shit, really, and the statistics seem like horrible too. But most, I don't know. That's what I don't get about, people talking about how, guys are pigs at work and da 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 da, and look, all these like problems. And I just don't know any of these folks. I just haven't seen as much of it sort of firsthand because of my limited maybe exposure or something.
But it exists.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh definitely. And especially on the videos that you see, and that just seems even more unbelievable though, when you actually get proof of it, and there's this place that's somewhere in the southeast or something of the United States, and they're just going off on this horrible tyrant of words, and berating someone, and just losing their shit, and just like, we just can't do that up here. I think that there's like the guy with the grass, that your friend,
Mm-hmm.
but for most part, people seem to not want to overreact, and they're a little bit more dialed down, but that's just my opinion. And when you're always looking for like the Spinard experience, I've done interviews with people, and sometimes people go, we don't talk about that, you know. It's like, oh shit, you know, it was that rough. And I do think in the 50s, especially, it was really rough. You know?
What don't they talk about?
Well, I think, you know, that there was typhoid. There was some kind of thing with the septic systems, and there was some kind of disease kind of going around, and you know, not enough heat, you know, not enough food, not enough money. You know, people really, really broke, and that. So yeah, I think it was really hard times, and we are not really in that. You know, so we go back to 71. I always think of that as the last moments of the frontier Alaska, because, you know, once the pipeline got going and all those yahoos from Texas and Oklahoma came up here, and then the oil companies were able to purchase legislatures or representatives and senators, then it fouled up the whole, like, you know, Jay Hammond's Alaska. It fouled up this whole kind of almost Switzerland of sorts, you know. We're really focusing on the common good. The Constitution of Alaska says all of those resources belong to the people of the state, you know, and it's a very clear message, you know, that everybody matters, everybody's a part of the thing. And then the corporations came up here and gave us the fucking super job, man. And you know, like, why do we have a $17 million train depot at the airport that nobody can use except Princess fucking Tours? You know, that's fucked up. That's the first thing we should take back right there, is have that fucking train depot. And I don't care if they have a kiddie car running up and down to downtown. Do something, you know, it can be done. And the main reason, and I'm almost confident of this, is the gravel train. You know, the gravel train that's 100 trains long, and it goes down to Seward or wherever the hell. It's like, oh, that's their money bag. That's, you know, because their passenger stuff doesn't work. But getting back to, you know, Alaska, we need to get it back, because this whole colonization bullshit has got to end. And I think, just like the statues and everything else, that train depot, not for the practical nature of it, but for what it represents, that Princess Tours can come up here and fucking own us, you know, and it's bullshit. And I'm sorry that the Southeast is probably suffering hard from not having tour boats. But, you know, there is an upside. I mean, some of those inland waterways can be restored because those ships aren't taking big fucking 5-gallon dumps in our bays, you know. That's also got to stop. It's just, you know, we have to just stop having us handled by other people. We have to take more of initiative ourselves and say, fuck, no, you're not going to come up here and set up shop. You know, Pebble Mine is done, you know, and hopefully we can reverse what they've done so far.
Well, Duke, I think that we could probably talk all day.
If you let me, I'm done. I wanted to say one more thing. No, I'm done. I'm sorry.
No. I am honestly, I have enjoyed this immensely. This has really been great. That does it for all my questions.
Yeah, right on.
This has been really great. And
yes.
If I see you driving around town on your scooter, I'll be sure not to race you.
Excellent. I appreciate it.
You can support local grassroots journalism at www.patreon.com/Crude Magazine. Crude Conversations is written, hosted, and produced by me, Cody Liska, for Crude Magazine. Music was produced by Alcoda Beats.